Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Cloud Computing for the C-Suite show with Brad Nelson, an internationally recognized and world's #1 cloud industry expert and thought leader, David Linthicum. This week's show is sponsored by Nelson Hilliard, cloud computing recruitment specialist, placing great people in cloud, IoT, fintech and AI. In this week's show, David and I will be talking about that most companies are on board with cloud. However, what factors or trends do they weigh as they seek to improve their deployment in 2018? Hi Dave, great to see you again, man. How's it going?
Everything's going great, man. Any day above ground is a good day.
Yeah, it certainly is. And so a good question for this week's show for you, Dave, is about momentum and cloud. And should C-levels create some form of strategies to keep cloud momentum going? And how would you best advise they do that?
Yeah, they should. And it's really up to them to really kind of keep the momentum going and start asking the questions. The big thing is funding. So what I find out there that stall cloud projects and cloud migration, even if there's lots of applications that are ready and should be moved to the cloud now, and data sets that should be moved to the cloud now, is the fact that they're, don't have enough budget to make it happen. So the reality is that money really makes things move within the Global 2000 out there, and your ability to get a budget in terms of moving into the cloud is going to be primary criteria for making success. And the reality is that a lot of these IT projects have had some of their budget siphoned off to do other things. In fact, it's the shiny object thing we talked about so many times here. IoT, big data system, predictive analytics, things that are typically maybe part of cloud, but not necessarily into the utility of cloud and moving your existing applications into a different platform, the platform of the cloud. And so the reality is that the CIOs and the CTOs and the CEOs specifically really need to get their staff focused on what's important for the business. And the shiny objects are going to be important at some point in time in the future. But the reality is we need to get the application workloads and the data workloads migrated in a secure way. We need to get them refactored. We need to get them localized in the particular cloud platform we're going to. We need to get ops in place. We need to get DevOps in place. We need to get all these sorts of things that are important to doing the business of running your applications in the cloud without looking at the shiny objects. So that takes money. So first and foremost, make sure the project's funded. You have the right people on it. They understand they have the support of the board. They have support of the C-levels in the organization. They're going to get what they need to make it work in terms of resources. And number two, they have their expectations set as to when they need to get things done. And they need to be reasonable in nature. In many instances, corporations are doing this for the first time, and therefore we're not going to have a lot of metrics in terms of how long it's actually going to take. We're going to basically take a wild-ass guess and then change our guess as time goes on and we understand different problems that we're getting into and opportunities we're able to solve, problems we're able to solve, opportunities we're able to find. And then finally, ensure that we're leveraging small successes. So we're not doing this big thing where, this is our project to migrate 2,000 application workloads, from on-premise into the cloud. That's going to take years and years and years and cost, millions of dollars. The reality is I'd rather see you do 10 applications at first, then 50 applications, and then 100 applications, and another 100 applications, and then different database workloads. All these things where there's a beginning, middle, and an end. And it may be something that takes less than a year, year and a half, and we can kind of work in tranches in that way. And by doing that, we're able to prove out the value in our capabilities of making these migrations work and happen. And the reality is we're going to have a lot more satisfied people in terms of consultants that work for me because they can see success in a very short term versus not looking down to a 10-year plan, which is almost unheard of in the United States. As to something we're going to do within a business. It just won't get the funding, it won't get the momentum, and it'll stall out and fail.
It will, absolutely, you're right. The momentum is key because, if you haven't got the continual momentum and things will stall and things will fail. And if your plan is too far ahead, with technologies moving at such an amazing pace, it'll be outdated before you even get a chance to get over the first year or two anyway. So it's, you're absolutely right. People don't want to be disillusioned with a 10-year plan. They want to start to see the results a lot sooner because they've set realistic goals that are achievable within a timeline that's going to get them a return on their initial investment within the project term. And it's only we spoke about on the Australia show, the Arturo project that's run by the Macquarie Group. that I think has just been taken just over 2 years or so for them to deploy about 100 apps or so onto the AWS public cloud infrastructure. I mean, obviously the Macquarie Group's a huge organisation with millions to throw at their cloud infrastructure, etc. But yeah, you're absolutely spot on. I think things have to be realistic, and there is a hell of a lot of risk out there for a small to medium-sized business that need to deploy, whether it's 5 to 10, 20, 30 apps or so to the public cloud in order to keep up with the dynamics of the industry. And I think there's a real pushback, isn't there, around the fear and the fear of the cost savings that they don't think are going to be there, or that the applications are going to fail, or worse, that the applications are going to get hacked and their data could be vulnerable or exposed to many people, i.e. like one of the S3 buckets gets left open as a user error and not Amazon. So it's a real thing about that fear, isn't it, Dave?
Yeah, it is. It's the ability to really kind of see something in a small increment of time where you can start alleviating those fears. If you think about it, if we learn to do anything in our lives, we didn't, take, years and years and years to do it and then work up to actually getting it done. We did things in small increments, whether it's riding a bike or whatever kind of sports skills that we have, things like that. And this is really no different. And you think of any adoption of technology in the past, including utilization of the internet, the rise of the web, the ability to adopt PCs, LAN, mini computers, distributed computing, things like that. All these things that really kind of changed the face of computing over time, waves of technology, they were done in very similar ways. And so we didn't just implement, LANs, willy-nilly within, the corporations out there to displace the mainframes. They came in over a 5-10 year period of time, typically a dozen or so at a time implemented within the organizations. Well, same thing with cloud. And so it doesn't really matter to me how you want to divide this up, but I typically recommend you divide it up for, around departments. And so human resources may move their existing systems into the SaaS cloud, resume tracking systems, employee tracking systems, payroll systems, things like that. And then next, it could be inventory control, and next it could be sales, and next it could be lots of other organizations that are basically in line to make their stuff cloud enabled. Now, you need to have common standards and common architecture and typically common people who are making the move. But these little successes, employees can see it and executives can see it. And we can celebrate this in a very short period of time. And this celebration, can really get people motivated to start moving in different directions and, and more funding, more time, more people, things like that to make it happen. The other thing, a core benefit of keeping the momentum going is you could have some very expensive cloud people leave the organization if they don't feel they're being utilized. So if they see their budgets being cut, they don't see their they don't see their projects really moving at the speed they're looking to. They see unrealistic expectations there. So say they're setting sites too far in the future. They're moving too many application workloads at a single time. They don't feel like they're going to be successful. They're going to move on and get on the job. And right now, this better than anybody else. There's 10 positions chasing one candidate in the cloud computing field, whether you're a developer, architect, network specialist, security specialist, things like that. And these guys are going to vote with their check, with their wallets, and if they're going to be able to get more money down the street, but more importantly, get more value for what they feel they're worth and value in terms of what they're doing, so they feel good about their jobs, they're going to leave. And that's absolutely going to be a disaster for folks in the business, because you got to go back and rehire those people or find additional people or retrain additional people. So not only going to stop the momentum, which is going to cause morale problems, which is going to cause people leaving the organization, but you got to go rehire them or go hire similar people, get people trained, and that's going to really stall things even further. So stopping momentum, is not going to just be maybe 6 months slowdown, while you wait for a more budget to show up. It's probably going to be a year and a half slowdown because of the latency and the issues that you're going to run into with having to go back and hire into the market and basically get things restarted, which is a very tough thing to do.
It is a very tough thing to do, and you're absolutely right. I think if the message from the C-suites isn't pushed down to the project managers or the direct line managers that are in control of the main team of workers that are underpinning the whole development of projects in order to get that return on investment, if that communication isn't there, people feel undervalued. People aren't getting that work satisfaction, that justification, those challenges that they want, either because, like you say, the plan's too long, or it's just not achievable or realistic in a time frame that's going to give that person the happiness they get from doing their job. And you're absolutely right, people do leave and people walk out on a project and it stalls the whole thing because, you know, people aren't satisfied, and people do come to me and people do get out into the industry and say, look, I want better challenges. This project is not going to get me where I want it to get to. I'm not happy anymore. It started off as a great idea, but now it's too many chefs are involved, and you know the broth is well and truly spoilt. So it's I think it's you're absolutely right with that, and yeah, it's I think it's disappointing for people that get excited about going into work to work on a great project, only to not have that level of communication with the C-suites or how that works in order to get that immediate satisfaction. They've bought into something, but they're not actually themselves personally being delivered on.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, there's a point where, if it's one of my clients and I see a slowdown in momentum in moving forward, then my advice to them is just stop. Because if you're not going to really put the money and effort into it, you can't be half pregnant in moving these systems. Either going to spend the money in doing security and governance and migration and doing the DevOps implementation to make it work the first time and make it work right. But if you try to do it in kind of a half-baked way, you're not going to end up where you want to be. People are going to be upset in terms of the results that come out of this, both the users as well as the developers and folks that exist in the business. So ultimately, this is something that it really is the responsibility of the C-level folks. And so I would, if I was on a board of directors, and I've been on a few of those, if I heard this was happening, I'd go after the CEO. I wouldn't go after the CIO. But they're the ones who really need to push this in terms of a strategic investment that needs to have visibility at the boardroom. And if they're not doing that, then don't bother, because you should just remain on your traditional systems and move along until you're ready to actually make the move into the cloud. If you're going to try to do it in kind of a half-baked way where you're going to do starts and stops, over the years, then you're never going to get there. In fact, it's going to make things worse.
Exactly. And you're right, the CEO is the bottleneck between the business and the stakeholders. So if it's not actually filtered down from the CEO down to the CIO, and the CEO can't be accountable, then the project is going to either go majorly over cost in terms to the initial budget agreed, or essentially just fall over completely, and the stakeholders will be at a real loss there. And we all know what happens when that happens, right?
That's right. Yeah, money down the drain.
Well, I was going to say testicles against the wall, but yeah, you're right, money down the drain.
That's a nicer way to say it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Dave, thanks again for being part of the C-Suite show this week. It's always a privilege to have your thoughts on that C-Suite level management, being the guy you are, and you're very amicable and you're really modest with where you've been and what you've done, and your input when it comes to the C-suites and that how things are moving in terms of momentum for the cloud is priceless. So thanks again for being part of the show, Dave.
No worries. And C-levels out there, keep your cloud momentum going, because it'll return back value to the company 20 times.
Yeah, exactly right. Thanks again, Dave. Thanks for joining us this week.
No problem.
Thanks for watching this week's C-Suite show with myself and David Linthicum. We hope you enjoyed it. And please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the show, as each week we do 3 different shows on cloud computing and also the weekly cloud computing news. You can find David on Twitter, which is @DavidLinthicum, and myself on Twitter also, which is @Nelson_Hilliard. Thanks again for watching.